The falling stage light didn't scream, it whispered, a metallic groan of surrender high above the studio floor that only my dancer's ear caught over the music. I didn't think. I became pure kinetic energy, a blur of instinct launching myself across the marley floor, not to perform a grand jet T, but to intercept the inevitable. I shoved little Maya out of the spotlight just as the heavy rig crashed down, not with a bang, but with a bone-shaking thud that erased the world in a burst of sparks and glass. The impact didn't feel like pain at first. It felt like a silent command to sleep, a crushing weight pinning my shoulder to the floorboards, while the air turned to dust and panic. I remember the floor rushing up, the smell of ozone and burning circuitry, and the frantic, high-pitched cry, not of pain, but of shock, proving she was safe, whole, untouched. "Stay back," I managed to choke out, my voice sounding like it was coming from underwater, trying to shield her eyes from the debris, from my own grimacing face. The room spun into a kaleidoscope of shouting parents and rushing footsteps, but my universe had narrowed to the heavy throbbing in my arm and the terrified wide eyes of a 6-year-old girl who had no idea her father's enemies had just tried to send a message through a lighting rig. In a world that demands we mind our own business, sometimes the most radical act of rebellion is to care too much, to step into the path of a storm meant for someone else. If you've ever felt like your kindness was a weakness, let this story be your armor. Because true strength isn't about how hard you can hit, but about who you're willing to shield when the sky starts falling. Hit that subscribe button to join our community of resilient souls. Like this video if you believe in the power of instinct, and tell me in the comments, have you ever trusted a gut feeling that saved you? The hospital ceiling was a vast white tundra of indifference, broken only by the rhythmic beeping that tethered me to consciousness. My shoulder wasn't just injured, it felt reconstructed from fire and broken glass, a constant, throbbing reminder of the split-second decision that had derailed my quiet life. A nurse with kind eyes and efficient hands was adjusting a drip, murmuring about concussions and lucky breaks, but her words evaporated when the atmosphere in the room suddenly compressed. It wasn't the air conditioning, it was a shift in gravity, caused by the man standing in the doorway. Julian Vance didn't walk in. He occupied the space, his presence sweeping away the sterile hospital calm, like a rogue wave. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than my tuition debt, tailored to hide the tension in his frame, but nothing could mask the intensity of his gaze, dark, calculating, and currently fixed on me with unsettling precision. He wasn't just a concerned father, he was a force of nature, a man whose name opened doors and silenced rooms across the city's skyline. "You moved before the rig even snapped," he said, his voice a low, resonant baritone that bypassed my ears and vibrated directly in my chest. "How?" "I heard the cable fray," I whispered, my throat dry, grappling with the sudden intimacy of his interrogation. The tension, it sounded wrong. Julian moved closer, his eyes searching mine not for deceit, but for the rare currency of competence. He revealed then that Maya wasn't just a student, she was the heiress to a legacy of corporate warfare, and the accident at the studio was a calculated sabotage, a warning shot from a rival conglomerate trying to leverage his only vulnerability. The realization hit me harder than the stage light. I hadn't just saved a child from a falling prop, I had stepped into the crossfire of a silent high-stakes war. "Because of you, she is safe," he said, the gratitude in his voice tempered by a steely resolve. "And because you intervened, you are now a witness, a liability to them, but a priority to me." He didn't offer a choice, he offered a reality. I could return to my vulnerable apartment and wait for the next accident, or I could recover behind the ironclad gates of his estate, under his protection, until the threat was neutralized. It wasn't a request, it was a relocation of assets, and for the first time in my life, I was the asset. Life at the Vance estate was a study in contrasts, a gilded fortress of velvet silence and high-tech surveillance, where I drank tea from porcelain cups, while men in earpieces patrolled the perimeter. Maya was a ray of sunshine in the gloom, oblivious to the danger, delighted to have Miss Elena as a houseguest, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being a piece on a chessboard I couldn't see. Julian was a ghost in his own home, appearing only in the evenings to review security logs and share brief, charged dinners where the air between us crackled with unspoken words. We started reviewing the Academy's security footage together, looking for the sabotage point, and that is when my dancer's eye caught what his highly paid security team had missed. It wasn't the shadows, it was the rhythm. The maintenance schedules, the delivery routes, the random inspections, They all synced perfectly with the movements of one person, Director Sterling. The woman who had hired me when I was at my lowest, who had championed my teaching methods, was moving through the footage with a purpose that betrayed her role. She wasn't checking the equipment, she was weakening it. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, a cold shard of ice in my chest. Sterling hadn't just been a boss. She had been a mentor, a supposed pillar of the arts community. To see her on screen methodically tampering with the rigging safety locks transformed my gratitude into a cold, hard rage. She hadn't just risked Maya. She had weaponized my classroom, my sanctuary. Julian saw the realization dawn on my face, the horror turning to fury. She sold us out, I said, my voice trembling not with fear, but with the adrenaline of truth. She knew Maya's practice schedule. She knew exactly where she'd be standing. Julian's expression darkened, a thunderstorm rolling in behind his eyes. She traded a child's safety for a payout, he replied, his voice devoid of emotion, which was far more terrifying than shouting. She thought it would look like negligence. She didn't count on you. We didn't wait for the police. We went to her. The confrontation in Sterling's office wasn't a shouting match. It was a dissection. We walked in just as she was shredding documents, the hum of the machine the only sound in the room, until the door clicked shut behind us. Her mask of benevolent authority slipped, revealing the cornered panic underneath, as Julian laid the photos on her desks. Snapshots of her meeting with corporate rivals, bank transfer records, the time-stamped footage of her sabotage. It was just supposed to be a scare, she stammered, backing away, her poise crumbling like cheap plaster. A disruption. No one was supposed to get hurt. I stepped forward, my injured arm in a sling, a living testament to her lie. You dropped 1,000 pounds of steel on a 6-year-old, I said, my voice steady, cutting through her excuses. That is not a disruption, that is malice. Sterling tried to bargain, to leverage her connections, but she was negotiating with a man who owned the building she stood in, and a woman who had finally found her voice. We didn't need violence, we had the truth, and in the world of high society, scandal is a fate worse than death. She was escorted out not in handcuffs, but in disgrace, her career incinerated by the very spotlight she craved. The drive back to the estate was quiet, the tension of the past weeks finally unspooling into a fragile peace. Maya was safe, the threat was neutralized, and Sterling would answer for her crimes in court. I sat next to Julian, watching the city lights blur past, feeling the weight of his hand settle over mine, warm, solid, an anchor in the storm. You saved her, he said softly, looking at me as if he was seeing me for the first time, not as a teacher or a victim, but as an equal. You saved us. I looked at him, at the man who had terrified me and protected me, and realized that in saving Maya, I had also saved myself from a life of playing it safe, of staying in the wings. I didn't do it for you, I whispered, turning my hand to interlace my fingers with his. I did it because it was right. He smiled then, a rare, genuine expression that reached his eyes. I know, he said. That is why you're staying. And for the first time, the word stay didn't sound like a command. It sounded like a promise. This story is a reminder that heroes aren't born. They're made in the split seconds where we choose courage over comfort. If Elena's bravery inspired you, please share this video with someone who needs a little strength today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. What was the biggest risk you've ever taken for someone else? Tell me your story in the comments below.